I'm sitting here with Michale Graves, the frontman for the legendary Misfits in the 1990s, arguably the best vocalist for the band. So my first question is about when you first started out. So while you were growing up and everything, did you always know that music was something you wanted to pursue?
It was the second thing that I knew that I wanted to pursue. When I was young, up to the point where I discovered music, I wanted to be in the service of the church. I wanted to be a God man. I wanted to be a priest, a preacher.
Wow.
Yeah. And then probably about, I don't know, maybe 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there, I discovered music, and music had a profound impact on me. You know, I felt it I felt it inside, and it moved me in a great way. And so my heart changed, and I felt that through music that my path was to serve through music, if you know what I mean.
No, I get what you're saying. And obviously your lyrics are very charged with a lot of like spiritual lyricism in them.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, so obviously your early years of wanting to be a priest influenced that, I guess?
Well, all my years,
yeah.
all of my years of being connected to my spirituality has influenced it.
Yeah? Wow. Very
Sorry,
cool.
I forgot the bar didn't have any fucking...
And so when you first started discovering music or felt like that was your calling,
yeah.
Was it always punk rock, or was there something else that started that?
It was really the music that I was around when I was young, you know.
Yeah.
I've never been a cliquey person, and so I've never just listened to one type of music and then say, oh, the rest sucks. I just have to listen to this. So, you know, my mom always had the radio on, and I grew up in a house with my uncle and my older brother. So, I mean, anything that I heard on the radio, or anything that I heard, you know, going through the records in my uncle's collection, was like Bruce Springsteen, like John Denver, and John McClane. Again, this is like early 80s, you know?
Yeah.
You know, my sister, I remember my sister had like Culture Club records, and Air Supply, and Madonna, and Michael Jackson. And then my brother had, you know, he would listen to like the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Iron Maiden, U2. So I got a little bit of everything from everywhere, and I was just zealous about music. I just loved it. Mm-hmm. Classical music, praise music, R&B, you know, eventually hip hop and funk, and I love it all.
Yeah. So you're really open-minded then, which is kind of something that you don't really see in rock a lot, right? Usually
that's true.
Yeah. Metalheads, they like metal, and
right.
That's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when you started out again pursuing music as a career, what would you say was like the main hardship you endured in the early years, at least?
In the early years, the main hardship. I always believed, I always knew that my path was to be a music man. So it really wasn't until later that the hardships came, because, well, you know what, let me back up. I'll answer you. The hardships came from, like, people above me. And what I mean, like, teachers, not necessarily my parents, because my especially my mom and dad were very supportive in what I wanted to do. But I really didn't care about anything else. You know what I mean? Like, school was like, whatever, and because I'm going to be a musician when I grew up. And so when you're young, you know, the teachers or the guidance counselors, and eventually the school psychologists, and I'd be like, well, listen, I'm going to be a musician when I grow up. So all this is just whatever.
Yeah.
And I still have, I got in trouble in elementary school, you know, or in the beginning of high school, in freshman, because I just didn't want to go. I just wanted to play my music, practice with my band, and that's it. And so I did this whole thing with the school, and the school psychologist came in and did this whole profile. Like, I wasn't on drugs, you know, I wasn't terribly depressed. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I just kept on telling them, I'm bored, man. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. and the psychologist, said that I had these delusions of grandeur, that I was going to do all these things when I grew up. And I proved him wrong tenfold, but
Sure.
so again, I think it was just the hardest part of being young and knowing what my path was convincing others to see it too.
Did you ever send him like one of your albums or anything?
No, but I still have that letter, and at times when I'm feeling that I need a little pick me up,
Yeah.
I read that and I think about how far I've come.
Well, you're a better man than me. I would have had that album say FedEx to him.
Yeah, totally.
So then, when you were first getting into the Misfits, and I won't spend too much time on this. I want to talk about your solo career. But I think you were 20, right, when you joined?
I was 20.
20. So when you were first auditioning for that band, did you think you were going to get it, or was that kind of like a Hail Mary for you?
After I talked to Jerry and set up, an audition, he said, learn as much as you can, learn as much as you want. When you're ready, he said, give me a call and we'll jam. And I remember being in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and I went to the record store and I bought I think it was Collection 2, the yellow one.
Okay, yeah.
And I put the CD on and I started listening to it, and I knew it.
Really?
I knew it. I was such a fan of the songs, like Horror Business and I knew that I was going to be the one. I didn't know how, but I just knew. I knew I was the one.
Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. And like, even for someone listening from the outside, the way you have such a different voice from Glenn Danzig, but the way it works with the band, you would never see that until you hear it. Like,
right on. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. So then I remember we talked.
I was just gonna say, it's funny because I swear to God, when I went to audition, I was really trying my best, not to mimic Glenn, but I was kind of doing my best, not impression of him, but I was trying to sing like him, and everyone kept on saying, wow, you really have your own style, and I'm sitting there thinking like, right on, okay.
You do,
right.
It's amazing when you play the Danzig era and then yours, both great, but just the way you, especially your track Helena, and Saturday Night, right, just such an incredible style to it.
Thank you.
And the writing, no problem. And then, so I remember last time we talked about your first tour with the Misfits.
Yeah.
And so you explained how difficult that was and crazy that was.
Insane.
Yeah. So as someone 20 years old, thrown into the limelight, basically trial by fire, how did that affect you as such a young person?
Man, I didn't process it all. I really compartmentalized all of it until I was about 25. It took about 5 years, and it was after the whole hockey thing and. But so the way that I dealt with it was that I compartmentalized all of it, and I just kind of put it over here, and I kept my blinders on, and I stayed focused on what I had to do. I have to be strong, I have to sing strong, I have to be creative, I have to lead this band artistically, I have to remain on my feet, while everything was just going crazy around me, personally and professionally, and yeah, and it didn't take, and then 5 years later, I remember my 25th birthday, I kind of ran away to a place in the world, and I remember just sitting there, just like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
What happened? And so that's how I dealt with it. I compartmentalized it, and I just worked as hard as I possibly could for the band.
I guess that's a good way of dealing with it, right?
I guess so. I guess so.
So just for the people listening now who haven't heard, the Michale Graves wanted to be a hockey player story, is there anything you wanted to add, or I know it was years until you got to really tell your side of the story?
Nothing to add to that story, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell that, because that's still one of the tales out there, the legends, like, yo man, why'd you really quit the band and play hockey? And it just wasn't the case. I love music, like I said, from a very, very young age. I knew what I wanted to do. Again, so to think that I would walk away from all of that to be a hockey player. And like I said last time, I'm good on the ice.
Yeah, you told me.
I'm good, but I'm not that good.
You might have some Canadian in you then.
Yeah.
So then, the next thing I want to bring up is obviously the albums you wrote, American Psycho and Famous Monsters, are two of the most iconic albums that came out of the 90s in the rock scene. So, and you wrote a lot of the songs on those two records. So is there any way you could tell me, like, the process you went through? Was it, like, emotional, delving into that sort of state?
What I did was I listened to Glenn's albums, you know, the Glenn era albums, Earth AD, Static. I loved Static Age. I listened to all the albums and just really dissected and tried to sort of back engineer everything that Glenn was doing. Try to get into his headspace as far as creativity. Reading about things that he was into, the way that he would speak about them, and try to get an idea of what he was how he was trying to create. And so I got a hold of that. I remember some of the, you know, like Walk Among Us kind of came out first as far as like song wise, and I remember working on Blacklight, you know, which is a very like Dave Vanian, almost like The Damned. So getting into that, but I also knew that the band had to be legitimized by something new. We couldn't just come out and make another record that sounded like the past. And I figured out, you know, Glenn, to me it seemed that Glenn was taking these science fiction stories and these old horror entertainment movies and pushing the allegories in order to bring life to the songs. And I thought, well, what an amazing way to create almost a, you know, this like transmedia sort of 360 degree kind of way to create, is to get hold of what the writers and the directors from the comic books or from the movies or was trying to do, internalize that, and then make it current to my life or what's going on in the world currently, which brought me to American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis's book that I was reading and real into. I've always been into you know, like sociological discussions and the psychology of nations and big groups. And so Bret Easton Ellis's book was very, very popular, and it was about, you know, what the 80s and into the 90s had done to people with the economy and the wars and you know, technology moving forward, you know, against this obsessive compulsive maniac crazy person. And I just thought that would kind of ring true, you know, sort of hit the zeitgeist for people. And I also knew that the Misfits were the whoa 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 band, right? Everyone was saying, oh, the Misfits and the whoa whoa whoas. And so I really pushed and fought hard for the album, one, to be called American Psycho, and for the American Psycho to open up the album. There's no mistake. The first thing that you hear is whoa whoa whoa. And
it's a great intro to the album. I mean, that's a song too that's kind of transcended generations. Like my 15-year-old brother plays it all the time.
It's amazing.
And so you said you would watch these movies or read these books and try to figure out what the writers and directors were thinking behind them. Is that something that came easily to you, or something you had to work at to get good at it?
It definitely took me some time. I understood. I had a great English teacher when I was young. I just had this conversation with somebody. I had this great English teacher when I was young, and I thought she was the Wicked Witch, man. She was just, and so I got in trouble, and I had to stay in class, you know, after school. And we were reading at the time Lord of the Flies.
Great book.
And this lady, her name was Miss Santos. I also had her for Spanish. She began to tell me about how writers would use allegories like Piggy's specs. You know, the glasses weren't just glasses. They it was the oracle in which they were seeing through, and just the breakdowns of the different characters, and it blew my mind, and it opened my mind to so many things. And I remember going through that process and looking back and you know, again, thanking God that there's no coincidences. Here I'm using these tools, these things that I learned that I was just like, yeah, whatever, when I was a young kid. So yeah, I mean, it's a process that I think that I've gotten much better at.
Okay, yeah. So then moving on to your solo career, which you definitely use a lot of the same techniques with
Sure.
getting to the root of the story.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to know is, when you first started out, did you feel like that was an opportunity to kind of change your entire style? Because a lot of people, in the rock community, they play with one band for 30, 40 years and they're
Yeah.
kind of set in their roots.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. I was much more of a, I was listening to things like, like R.E.M. or Nirvana, where there's allegory, but, it's definitely a different flavor. So for sure, it was all a great opportunity for me to come out of my own and into new areas as an artist. But again, it was right up my alley because I was a theater kid.
Yeah.
And so the big theatrics of it all and the makeup and were all kind of right up my alley.
Okay. And so one thing that I've always admired about you is when you listen through your discography, every album kind of has its own feel. And like, if you were to listen to American Psycho and then
Yeah.
When Worlds Collide, like, you'd think it's two different artists. So how do you kind of keep evolving your sound and not falling into that rut that so many artists do?
It's like they say back in the American South and the blues music, it's just, three chords and the truth. I just, what's in my heart and in my soul, I push out and I try to stay as non-judgmental as I possibly can. And I'm fortunate enough to have had a career in which there hasn't been too many people over my shoulder saying like, oh, it's got to be like this. Well, maybe do it like this. It's just been, this is what I'm writing. This is what I'm going to record. It resonates with me, and I feel that it'll resonate with, or I hope that it'll resonate with people that listen to it.
Yeah. And then, so again, going back to When Worlds Collide, you had a song on there which is Dying on a Sunday Morning.
Yeah.
Which is the sequel to Crying on a Saturday Night.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered, were you afraid when you released that song? Because that Crying on a Saturday Night, it means so much to so many people.
That was kind of like a bet between my business partner and I.
Yeah.
And because we had talked about it every now and again, and then in the middle of When Worlds Collide, he's a big competitive guy, and so am I. Not big, but he's real big.
Yeah.
He calls me up and he's like, kind of puts the challenge on me. He's like, why don't you on this record write that sequel we always talked about to Crying on Saturday Night? I said to him, well, that's kind of like jumping the shark. And, he's like, what, you can't do it? And I was like, oh, man, I think I can. He's like, well, you either can or you can't. I'm like, shit. So again, it was a real creative challenge and at a perfect time to help grow my confidence and kind of jump the shark. I knew that if I wrote a crappy song that, even if nobody else ever said anything, I would know. But again, it resonates with people and they get it, and the spell that I cast kind of worked. So
For sure it does. I mean, I remember when I was 17, in the middle of my teenage angst, I'd play Saturday Night and then have it just go right into Dying on a Sunday Morning.
Man, it's perfect.
Yeah, it was, and it was just the perfect tweak on it too that made it different. So then I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
You're also a dad, so
I am.
Obviously I can't relate to that. But how do you balance these two extremely demanding careers? Dad's basically a career.
I tell you, man, that's the hardest thing. Truly, the hardest thing in my life is being away from my children. I have three children. A 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old son. That's the hardest part of everything that I do because, time is the most precious thing we have in this experience that we're having. Time is short and it's precious and you never get it back. And so knowing that and watching my children grow up from afar, even though I have an incredible relationship with all three of my children. You know, Tommy's really young, so he's kind of still like, you know, he doesn't really know much. But my girls, you know, we talk every day, and it's very loving, and it's very functional, and it's just amazing. But the hurt and the longing that I have, because my son just started walking, and I saw it on a video, you know, and I the first time, you know, my oldest daughter walked, I saw it on a video, and I miss birthdays and soccer, and, you know, I miss a lot of that. And so that creates a void, you know, and it hurts. And so to fill that, again, God is a big part of my life. And there's some things that I have to go to a higher supernatural power to deal with, because it's hard. So I find the blessing in all of this, in that I get to raise other people up. I hear about being a miracle in other people's lives every single day. For whatever reasons, in the past couple weeks, there's so many people that come up to me that have been telling me about people that they've lost. There's a lot of death and people broken in that way that have come up to me, and I've, you know, a lot of crying and hugging. And so for myself and for my children, when they ask that question, Daddy, why are you gone all the time? It's not just, they're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Woo! So it goes back to when I was very young, and to serve. I come from a family of you know, public servants, and people that have, you know, are in the service of others their whole life. My father, especially. And so I'm in the service of others by being out there and being that miracle in people's lives, and using my talents and my time to lift other people up and get them to the next point, and like I said, and be that miracle. And when I explain that to my children, it's worthy of the sacrifice that we're making, and the longing and the pain that we have from separation.
That's an amazing answer to what I thought was a tough question. I really appreciate that. So just as we finish up, where can people find you on social media, and where can we grab your music?
OfficialMichaelGraves.com.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, man.